Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at a really interesting power shift happening all around us. It's this move away from the traditional top-down way of doing things
Right.
to something much more driven by participation in community.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, think about how we find out about good restaurants now.
Yeah.
It wasn't that long ago you grab a guidebook, right? Like Frommer's or something.
Sure, the experts told you where to go.
Exactly. And today, most of us, we just pull out our phones, check Yelp.
Instantly. Yeah.
And that little everyday change, it actually reflects a much bigger trend.
It really does. As Jeremy Hyman's and Henry Timms talk about in their book, New Power, we're seeing this big transition from what they call old power, the kind that commands compliance, makes you consume.
Top-down control.
Exactly, to new power, which is all about people sharing ideas, creating stuff together, shaping communities.
Sounds fundamental.
It is. It's the difference between a world where information is sort of held tightly on a need-to-know basis and one where there's this growing expectation of transparency, a right to know.
Okay, so for this deep dive, we've pulled together some really fascinating examples showing this shift in action across, well, all sorts of different areas.
Yeah, a real mix.
And our mission today is really to dig into how these participatory experiences and these community-led things are reshaping how we interact, how we create, even how we give back.
It's changing a lot.
So, okay, where do we start seeing this new dynamic really taking hold? Maybe with, resources, money.
Yeah, that's a great place to start. A really compelling early example is crowdfunding and what you might call citizen philanthropy.
Citizen philanthropy, I like that.
Yeah. Think about donor shoes. Started by Charles Best, right? It's become this amazing way for everyday people to directly fund specific things teachers need in public schools.
So not just giving to a general fund, but this classroom needs books.
Exactly. And the numbers are staggering. We're talking over $400 million raised.
Wow.
From more than 2 million people. And it's helped something like 18 million students.
That's incredible. Why do you think that direct approach works so much better than, say, traditional ways of funding schools?
Well, I think part of it is that direct connection. You see exactly where your money's going. You see the specific need, the microscope, the art supplies. It feels tangible. You feel the impact more directly, maybe.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That direct line must be really motivating. And then you've got platforms like GoFundMe.
Oh, absolutely. GoFundMe's become, well, almost essential for people facing unexpected crises, right? Medical bills, accidents.
You see it everywhere.
And it lets communities just rally around someone incredibly quickly. Provides that immediate financial cushion. It really shows collective empathy in action.
It really does. What about the timing on these things? Is there anything interesting there?
Yeah, actually, research shows that a huge chunk of crowdfunding money comes in, like the last 72 hours of a campaign.
Really? The final stretch?
Yeah, which is kind of fascinating. Is it just urgency? The deadline looming?
Or maybe seeing others chip in, like, oh, it's close, I should help push it over.
Should be. That social proof idea. If lots of other people are doing it, maybe I should too. It definitely kicks in at the end there.
Okay, so pooling money is one thing. But this new power seems to be changing how we handle really personal stuff too, like our health.
Absolutely. Take a look at Patients Like Me. It's an online community, but it's way more than just a forum. You've got over 500,000 people dealing with more than 2,700 different conditions.
Wow.
And they're basically crowdsourcing medical insights, sharing what works for them, what side effects they had, practical tips.
So learning directly from other people going through the same thing.
Exactly. Think about the sheer amount of lived experience, practical knowledge being shared peer-to-peer. It kind of bypasses the traditional doctor knows best model in some ways.
It's almost like democratizing that knowledge, isn't it? Taking the wisdom of the crowd, but the crowd is people actually living with it.
Precisely.
So how do these ideas, these new ways of doing things, how do they actually spread and, catch on?
That's where the thinking shifts a bit. You know the book Made to Stick? About making ideas memorable?
Sure, yeah.
Well, the evolution of that is thinking about ideas being made to spread.
Made to spread. Okay, what's the difference?
The key thing is, ideas don't usually just get broadcast from some central source and everyone adopts them. It's more sideways.
Sideways.
Yeah, they spread through our networks, friends, family, small groups, and people are much more likely to actually change their behavior if an idea is validated by people they trust in their own circle.
Right, it's not just hearing it. It's hearing it from someone you know.
Wow.
It feels more relevant, more trustworthy.
Exactly. It's that local validation.
So when does one of these new power ideas really truly take root? What's the sign?
Well, there's a great line. It's only really a movement if it moves without you.
Ah, okay. So it takes on a life of its own.
Exactly. When it gets enough momentum that it's self-sustaining, driven by the people involved, not just the founders or the initial pushers, that's when you know it's real.
It's interesting, even really established organizations seem to be tapping into this, or maybe rediscovering their roots, like The Economist.
That's a fascinating example. People think of The Economist now as this, established publication.
Right. Very traditional, almost.
But it started back in 1843 as a campaigning group. Its whole purpose was to push for the repeal of the British Corn Laws.
No kidding. So it was born out of collective action.
Absolutely. A specific community goal driving it. So even old institutions can have these kinds of roots.
And then you've got the newer players like BuzzFeed. They seem to have totally nailed creating stuff that people just have to share.
Oh, they've definitely mastered that. Their whole strategy isn't just about getting clicks on their site.
It's about the shares, right?
It's all about the shares. They focus on making content that hits an emotional button. It's new, it's funny, it's shocking, it's heartwarming. It's something that makes you want to pass it on to your friends.
And they use data to figure that out.
Constantly.
Yeah.
They're analyzing what resonates, what triggers that sharing impulse. They really understand their audience.
This idea of collective action, sharing a purpose,
Yeah.
it really seems central to something like #GivingTuesday. That was direct response to Black Friday, wasn't it?
Yes, exactly. Launched back in 2012, specifically to create a day focused on giving back, right after all that Thanksgiving weekend shopping madness.
The counter-narrative.
The counter-narrative, yeah.
Mm.
And what's amazing is how fast it took off globally. It's not just about donating money anymore either. People organize blood drives, volunteer time.
All sorts of things.
Yeah, a huge range of activities. And it generates hundreds of millions in donations now. It just shows how a simple shared idea can mobilize so many people.
And universities jumped on this too, right?
Yeah.
Creating their own giving days, like Michigan's #GivingBlueDay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, lots of universities do this now. Michigan's was a big early success story.
Their fundraising numbers were pretty impressive, weren't they?
They really were. First year, they hit $3.2 million, then $4.2 million the next year, then $5.4 million.
Wow.
It just shows if you can tap into that alumni network, that sense of community, with a clear, focused call to action for a short period, it works.
Okay, so who are the people who actually make these things happen? It can't just be random spread, right? There must be key individuals.
You're right. The idea of connected connectors is super important.
Connected connectors. Okay, what defines them?
These are people who first share the worldview or the passion behind the idea, but crucially, they're also really well networked.
So they know a lot of people.
Exactly. And they have influence within those networks. They act like amplifiers, spreading the message, getting others involved. They often bridge different groups, too.
Right, connecting different clusters of people. Makes sense. Okay, let's switch gears a bit. What about platforms built specifically to, like, empower individuals?
Yeah.
Like Etsy.
Etsy's a classic example. Their whole mission, right from the start, was about helping artists and crafters actually earn a living doing what they love.
Which is tough for a lot of artists.
Totally. And when they started in Brooklyn, they didn't just put up a website. They actively went out to flea markets, craft fairs.
Where the creators already were.
Exactly. They recruited key people in those communities, and they made a big commitment to keeping their cut low, never more than 3.5%. That showed they were serious about the seller's success.
That builds trust, I imagine.
Definitely. It creates an ecosystem where the creators feel supported, not just exploited.
And then there's Airbnb. They started solving a very practical problem, but the community aspect became huge for them, especially when they ran into trouble.
Yeah, their origin story is famous, right? Founders needed rent money, put air mattresses in their apartment.
Right, very humble beginnings.
But then as they grew, they hit regulatory walls in places like New York, San Francisco.
Yeah, cities weren't always happy.
So they made a really smart strategic shift. They rallied their hosts, turned them into advocates, community organizers, basically.
Giving them a stake in the fight.
Exactly. It really strengthened that belong anywhere idea, made it feel like a community movement defending itself. They even tweaked their review system.
Oh, yeah. How?
They made it so guest and host reviews are published at the same time. You can't see what the other person wrote until you've both submitted.
Oh, so you don't get people giving retaliatory bad reviews.
Precisely. It leads to, hopefully, more honest feedback overall. It's about building trust within that community.
This theme of empowering creators, sharing the upside.
Hmm.
That's huge for YouTube too, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely fundamental. The YouTube Partner Program, giving creators 55% of the ad revenue from their videos.
That's a big chunk.
It's huge, and it was revolutionary. It created a direct financial incentive for people to make and share content. It basically fueled the entire creator economy we see today.
So it seems like just having a free platform isn't always the answer. Sometimes you need people to have a bit more skin in the game, maybe even pay something.
That's a really key insight. Look at Meetup.
Okay, the site for organizing local groups.
Right. Initially, it was totally free to start a group. Anyone could do it.
Sounds good, very open.
But the founder, Scott Heiferman, he noticed something. The organizers who weren't paying anything, they often weren't very committed. Groups would fizzle out.
Ah, they weren't invested.
Exactly. So they introduced a small subscription fee just for the organizers. And what happened?
Let me guess. Better groups.
Yeah. They actually saw more commitment, more sustainable, active groups forming. That small barrier made people take it more seriously. It increased the value somehow.
Interesting. Okay, so we've seen a lot of positive examples of this new power. But what happens when companies try to use the old playbook, the top-down approach, in this new world? Does it backfire?
Oh, it definitely can. Big time. Uber is kind of the poster child here, maybe?
Their growth was explosive, but controversial.
Insanely fast growth. But that whole move fast and break things attitude, especially ignoring local regulations, it made them a huge target.
Right, mayors and city councils were not pleased.
And then came the controversies, the questions about their culture, investor pressure, and boom, hashtag delete
I
tuber.
remember that. It went viral.
It showed how quickly public opinion can turn when a company seems out of step with, community values or basic fairness.
And wasn't there a community-driven alternative that popped up in Austin, Texas when Uber left for a while?
Exactly, Ride Austin. It was created by the local tech community as a
A
nonprofit.
nonprofit rideshare.
Yeah, and their whole model prioritized the drivers. They got 100% of the standard fare, potentially full benefits, and they let riders round up fares for local charities.
Not human. Was that their tagline?
That was it. A total contrast to the corporate top-down model. It showed there was another way.
Sometimes this new power thing isn't just about practical stuff like rides or funding, though. It taps into something bigger, more aspirational, like that Star Citizen game.
Oh, Star Citizen is absolutely wild. You've got this legendary game developer, Chris Roberts.
Wing commander guy, right.
That's him. And he basically taps into this shared dream among gamers for the ultimate space simulation game.
And the crowdfunding was insane.
Off the charts. Over $150 million raised. From over 1 million backers, who they call citizens.
For a game that's still not fully released.
Still in development, but people aren't just donating. They feel like they're part of building it. They get early access, input. They're essentially paying to dream, to be
Right.
part of creating this massive thing. It's about that shared purpose.
And it's not always just money, is it? Sometimes people contribute their ideas, their feedback, directly into the product itself.
Absolutely. Look at Xiaomi, the Chinese smartphone company.
They grew incredibly fast.
Yeah, and a big part of their strategy was involving their users directly. They'd actively ask for feedback every week.
Every week.
Every week. And they'd release updated versions of their phone's interface, their UI, based on that feedback. They called it Orange Friday.
So the users were basically part of the R&D team.
It was like having this huge, super engaged R&D department made up entirely of your customers. And this ties into the IKEA effect, too.
Ah, right. The IKEA effect. We value stuff more if we built it ourselves, even if it's a bit wobbly.
Exactly. We overvalue our own creations, the things we put effort into. So if you help shape a product, like the Xiaomi phone interface, you feel more ownership, more loyalty. Co-creation is powerful.
And some organizations are taking this commitment to purpose and community really seriously, even changing their legal structure.
You're probably thinking about Kickstarter.
Yeah, they became a public benefit corporation.
They did, which is a huge deal. It legally obligates them to consider their social impact alongside profit. It writes their values into their corporate DNA.
And their impact has been massive, hasn't it? Launching projects, creating companies, jobs.
Absolutely huge. Countless new companies, nonprofits, artistic projects, jobs, all funded through their platform. It's undeniable.
And sometimes this community power leads to, well, the unexpected, like the potato salad guy.
Chuckles. Oh, Zach Danger Brown and his potato salad. Yes.
He just wanted to make potato salad.
Was it? And his Kickstarter campaign somehow raised over $55,000.
Incredible.
It's just a funny, lighthearted reminder that these platforms are social spaces, and people will rally around the weirdest, most wonderful things, sometimes just for the fun of it, just be part of something quirky.
And then you have companies that build their whole brand around being bold, getting the community fired up, like BrewDog.
Oh, BrewDog. They are definitely masters of unconventional community building.
Their equity for punks thing.
Exactly. They didn't just seek venture capital. They sold shares directly to their customers, making them co-owners.
And they're pretty provocative about it.
Very. Attention-grabbing stunts, anti-establishment attitude. But it built this incredibly passionate community. And those early investors, they've seen amazing returns. It shows you can align business success with real community investment.
Even really big, established companies sometimes lose their way and then find success by reconnecting with their fans. LEGO seems like a prime example.
LEGO's turnaround is fascinating. They almost went bankrupt, remember?
Yeah, they got too diversified or something.
Right. And part of their comeback was realizing they had this huge, passionate adult fan base to the AFOLs, adult fans of LEGO.
We were kind of ignoring them before.
Pretty much. Then they embraced them. They created the LEGO Ambassador Network, basically liaisons with the fan community. And then came LEGO Ideas.
Where fans submit their own designs.
Exactly. Fans submit ideas, people vote, and if LEGO decides to produce it, the fan creator gets a share of the revenue.
That's brilliant. Tapping into free R&D and passion.
Totally. And that community engagement was a huge part of why they eventually overtook Mattel to become the biggest toy company in the world. They listened to their power users.
It really feels like all of this points towards needing a different mindset, doesn't it? It's not just about hitting specific targets anymore.
Exactly. There's that phrase, hitting the target but missing the point.
Right. We need to be more focused on seeking solutions, being willing to experiment, try things out, learn from, unexpected places.
Kind of a world is my lab mentality.
Yeah, I like that. Always observing, always adapting. Even big companies like GE saw this. They started their FastWorks program inspired by the lean startup.
Trying to be more agile, quicker innovation inside a huge corporation.
Exactly. Embracing that rapid learning cycle.
So to kind of wrap up this deep dive, it's really clear we're in the middle of this major shift. It's driven by participation, by community.
Yeah, definitely moving away from just being passive consumers.
Towards being active creators, active sharers, building things together.
Absolutely. All these examples we talked about, crowdfunding, Patients Like Me, LEGO Ideas, even Ride Austin, they all point to this world is my lab idea, this new power reshaping things.
So here's maybe a final thought for you listening in. Think about your own life, your own field. Where could embracing these new power ideas, more transparency, more participation, really building community, where could that lead? Interesting question.
What might happen if you shifted just a bit from that old need-to-know mindset towards more of a right-to-know, both in what you look for and maybe what you're willing to share yourself?
What might change? Yeah, something to chew on.
Definitely. Okay, that's all the time we have for this deep dive.